aspirants, welcome back to another learning video. In my today's video lecture, I am going to look at question number 63 from Delhi University's 2020 M.A English Entrance question paper. In my last video lecture, I looked at a few important ones from JNU's 2020 M.A English Entrance question paper. We've completely solved JNU's 2019 question paper as well, and a few important ones from Delhi University's 2018, 2019 question papers as well. All the links are provided in the description box given below. Alright, so now let's look at question number 63 from Delhi University's 2020 M.A English Entrance question paper. It says, read the poem and answer the question that follow. The world is not with us enough. Oh, taste and see. The subway Bible poster said, meaning the Lord, meaning if anything, all that lives. To the imagination's tongue, grief, mercy, language, tangerine, weather, to breathe them, bite, savor, chew, swallow, transform into our flesh, our deaths, crossing the street, plumb, quince, living in the orchard and being hungry and plucking the fruit. Yeah. Now here we can really identify the answer of the poem if we know, number one, this poem is called Oh Taste and See and was written by Denise Lovato. Oh Taste and See by Denise Lovato. What's the question? There's an intertextual allusion to another poem. Identify the writer. So if we try going back and try remembering what Wordsworth said in his popular work, the world is too much with us. What did he say? He said, the world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our pores. Little we see in nature that is ours, giving our hearts away, sordid boon. Right? The world is too much with us. Now, if we try going back here and look at what Denise has written. She says the world is not with us enough. And what did Wordsworth say? He said the world is too much with us. And now let's look at the question. There's an intertextual allusion to another poem. Been talking about intertextuality all this time. Been talking about the importance of intertextuality in all my videos. Yeah, so the intertextual allusion is to Wordsworth's work, the world is too much with us. So herein we have our first answer, option 2, William Wordsworth. Alright, so now let's look at question number 2, but before we begin understanding what this question is about, let's first of all look at this poem, right? I want you to understand that this question is also based on the same poem. Right, so there's no need of getting confused or whatsoever. Right, so now coming back to question, it says, which among the following lines directly allude to a biblical verse? Into our flesh our deaths, hungry and plucking the fruit, oh taste and see, if anything all our lives to the imagination's tongue. Now if you want to look at the modernist poetry, right, you see a lot of biblical influences being used. You want to look at Eliot, you want to look at Ezra, and you see a lot of biblical influences. So in the similar fashion, in the works of Denise, you see a lot of biblical influence. Now if I have to quote this beautiful verse from Bible directly, it says, Oh taste and see that the Lord is good, blessed is the man that trusts in him. Right, so here we mark our option number 3, that is oh taste and see. Oh taste and see is the right answer for this question. Alright, so now let's look at question number 3. It says, what is the predominant mood of the poem? A, reflexive, B, authoritative, C, pragmatic, or D, comic. Of course it's not authoritative, it's not comic. Pragmatic is rational, so it's not, of course it's rational. Anything that is serious, anything that is contemplative is automatically rational. So if you look at the bigger picture, we want to close our eyes and mark reflexive. So you see this very, reflecting and very contemplative, very serious and very meditating kind of mood running throughout the poem. So we want to close our eyes and mark option A, reflexive. Alright, so now let's look at question number 4. Again, this question is based on the same poem, right? Now, before we begin understanding what this question has for us, I want to tell you one very interesting thing about Denise. So Denise, on this particular day during her ride, she saw this beautiful poster that read, "Oh, taste and see." And she was so inspired by this poster that she came back and she ended up writing, "Oh, taste and see." And herein, you had this in your exam last year. Right, so now keeping this idea in our mind, we will try to look at the question. Which of the following statements about the poem is or are correct? A. Poetry according to the poem has nothing to do with escape. B. Poetry according to the poem has to do with involvement, engagement with the senses. C. Poetry according to the poem should invoke the reader to seize the day. If you look at the 4 options now, 1 is A only, B is C only, 3 is all of these, or 4 is none of these. Let's try to consider these 3 options once again. A, it says, poetry according to the poem has nothing to do with escape. Of course, if you look at this poem, it has got nothing to do with escape. So option A is absolutely right. Then we have B, it says, poetry according to the poem has to do with involvement, engagement with the senses. Now, let's try to refer to these images. If you look at this, it says, breathe them, bite, savor, chew, swallow, transform into our flesh. What idea does it give you, right? It has got everything to do with involvement and engagement with senses. So yes, option B, that is poetry according to the poem has to do with involvement, engagement with the senses, is absolutely right. And now if you look at option C, poetry according to the poem should invoke the reader to seize the day. I just told you how Denise was inspired to write this poem. She just looked at the poster and she came back and she ended up writing this poem, right? And here we must try and understand that Denise wrote this beautiful poem when she was facing this deep spiritual crisis. And you may want to notice, her desire to be in absolute communion with nature, unlike Wordsworth, right? You see, Denise wants to take inspiration from her surroundings. Like she was so inspired by the poster, right? But then if you look at Wordsworth and if you look at his idea in the world is too much with us, Wordsworth is so disgusted with the dissipated city life that it does not, he in fact completely refuses to take any inspiration from the surroundings. But then we see that Denise, on the other side, wants to take inspiration from the society, and she does from the poster. So poetry according to the poem should invoke the reader to seize the day. Yes, right. So option C is also correct. So here, option 3, that is all of these, is the right answer for us. All right, now let's look at question number 5. It says, which among the following lines allude to the book of Genesis in the Bible? A, into our flesh, our deaths. B, hungry and plucking the fruit. C, oh taste and see. D, living in the orchard. 1, D only. 2, C only. 3, A, B and C. Or 4th, A, B and D. Now let's try to look at this question in detail. Particular question really reminds us of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree that brought death into the world. Now if we look at the question, what does it say? It says, which among the following lines allude to the book of Genesis in the Bible? Genesis in the Bible. So here maybe we want to understand what this book of Genesis is about. So Bible basically begins with the book of Genesis. This particular book talks about how God created earth, and then on the 7th day he created man from the ashes in his image and breathed life into him. And therein we had the first human being, Adam. And how then God gave him authority over all the animals and birds in the garden. And then one day we see how Adam was put into a deep sleep, and then how God took his rib and created this woman called Eve. And then we notice how one day when Eve was walking along the garden, she was deceived by this serpent to taste the fruit of that tree that God forbid them from eating. So now if we want to consider our questions, we may want to look at option A, which says, into our flesh our deaths. So these lines, transform into our flesh our deaths, refers to the belief that Christians hold that, after death, man would turn into ashes just as he was created from the dust. Right. So this comes from the book of Genesis in the Bible. Then we have option B, which says hungry and plucking the fruit. Now these lines, hungry and plucking the fruit, refers to how Eve was tricked by the serpent into eating the fruit that God prohibited. So again, these lines come from book of Genesis in the Bible. Now if we look at option number 4, that is living in the orchard. Again, it refers to book of Genesis, which says, the Lord planted an orchard in the east in Eden, and there he placed the man he had formed, that is Adam. But then if we look at taste and see, now this particular line, it refers to New Testament, right, which refers to the birth of Jesus Christ, and then how Christ ended up saving the entire humanity. And of course, he sacrificed his life to save all of us. So if we look at the options now, we have option 1 D only, C only, option 3 is A, B and C, and 4th is A, B and D. So this question talks about which among the following lines allude to the book of Genesis in the Bible. So we just discussed that 1, 2 and 4, A, B and D, all of these lines allude to the book of Genesis in the Bible. So option number 4, that is A, B and D, is our right answer. Alright, so now let's look at our last question for today. It says, what is the larger theme that the poem is foregrounding? 1. Ecstasy of heart. B. Ecstasy of soul. 3. Ecstasy of mind. Or 4. Ecstasy of body. Now let's try to go back and look at these images. What does it say? Imagination stunk. Grief. Language. Breathe. Bite. Savor. Chew. Swallow. Transform into our flesh. Now we may want to notice that all of these things lie on materialistic plane, and anything that lies on materialistic plane is in absolute communion with body, right? So there's no doubt. Option 4, ecstasy of body, is the right answer for us. Thank you so much for joining me here. For any details related to our courses, you may log on to finlandacademy.com, or you may also WhatsApp or call us at 88650 28865 for any queries. Thank you.